I Hello everyone. I hope everyone is doing good. So in today's video we are going to talk about how we should approach Spark, how you should start learning Spark. So this video is going to be very beneficial for all those people who are going to start with data engineering skill, and especially to those people who are going to start with the Spark or they are very new to the Spark. So I have seen many people starting with the Spark learning. They go into the Spark architecture, and most of them get stuck into the misconcept of the Spark, get into the complexity of the Spark, and eventually they stop learning Spark or they get into some other field or other technology. There are few people who get into the Spark architecture so deep in the starting of his career, they don't practice or they don't have the exposure to the practical aspects of the Spark. And there are few peoples which I have seen, they are very good in building Spark application, but they don't understand the Spark architecture, and that lead to the poor code optimization or the poor application optimization. So this in this video we'll discuss everything in detail. We'll know that how we should start learning Spark, which area we should focus now and which area we should keep it for some other time. So for all the people who have started with the Spark, please watch this video till end, and do share this video to your friends, to your colleague who want to be a data engineer, who are new to the Spark, who want to start their career in a data engineering field. Please do share it and do subscribe to my channel. It helps me a lot. So I have written down all the major point we should keep in mind while we start learning Spark. The first thing is the first mistake which people make is they go very deep into the architecture. They are very hard on understanding the architecture. So my advice will be go slow to the architecture. So like when I started Spark, at that time Spark was very new. It was very new to the IT, and like we started with the application building with the Scala, with the RDD, and then with the eventually with parallelly with application development we started learning Spark architecture when we got stuck into some optimization stuff. But now the scenario is different. Now the Spark and the ecosystem around the Spark has evolved a lot. So you need to be a bit fast. You don't have much time to get into all everything of the Spark. You should start building application. But I advise that in the starting, just go gentle with the Spark architecture. You can go through my playlist. I'll just share the screen. I'll show you. So there are around 22 videos. So I would suggest you to first understand the basic architecture of the Spark. You can go to this video, Spark execution architecture, or you can start with how Spark execution works. So video number, these three videos, Spark session, Spark execution architecture, how Spark execution work, these three are very important. Let me see anything. Yeah. Okay. So you can start with the with that thing, and then you will start with the other thing. So my advice will be go to these three videos first. Also, you can go to the Spark documentation. You can also follow different vlogs, but don't get into too much of the complexity of architecture in the starting. For few days you will feel very good. You will be very confident that you are understanding multiple things, but that will be a lot of burden, and after few days you will lose the concentration of the Spark architecture. So the first thing is don't go very hard into it. Go very gentle with the architecture. Try to understand what is MPP, massive parallel processing. So what do you understand by MPP, how MPP is implemented into some different database, like how MPP architecture works in Teradata. Go through the theory of that. Don't go very deep. Go into the overview theory of that, and then you will understand why we are talking about the parallel processing. What is parallel processing? Understand what is a cluster, how cluster is created. Don't go into very much of technicality, just an overview of that. Then you understand what is data distribution, why we distribute data. Like in the MPP of the multiple database, we distribute the CPU. But in the Spark, in the big data technology, we talk about distributing the data rather than distributing the CPU. So what is the advantage of that? Try to understand. So for first few weeks, 1 or 2 weeks, you should focus on this thing. Then you can go through my videos, these first three videos, and then you can go into other vlogs also. Then try to understand the need of the Spark. What is the need of the Spark? What problem statement Spark solves? So there are a problem earlier with the traditional database, when the data started growing, when we started capturing a lot of logs from the flight data, from the internet data, multiple events data, then the data becomes very big, and and people wanted to have the analytical query run on the data. So when we run analytical query, when we run complex joins, when we run complex aggregation on the heavy set of data, it becomes very difficult for the traditional compute engine, traditional database to solve that, to understand that. So there comes the solution of big data, and there was a Hadoop as a first solution. And there was another solution also, Teradyne MPP, massive parallel processing amp, they were using as a CPU. So understand why Spark was required. So while understanding why Spark was required, you will also understand why Hadoop was there and what was the issue with the Hadoop. Try to understand this difference. So for 1 week, try to go through multiple vlogs, try to understand the differences of this thing. I hope in one of the introduction session you will have that thing in one of my videos. I don't remember where I have mentioned that, but you can check it. Then you try to read into the big data ecosystem history. Like there was a big Latin language, there is a Hive which we still use. Why Hadoop was there? What is HDFS? Just learn about what is the file system, like in the operating system. Like for example, I'm using Mac, so which kind of file system is mentioned here? How OS block is being divided? What do you understand by the Oracle file system, or any of the RDBMS file system? How the block of the database system is defined, and what's the purpose of that? And then eventually you will understand what the need of HDFS, why we need HDFS, and why it is so important. Once you will understand the file system, once you will understand the history of the big data ecosystem, then you will have more interest toward the Spark, because you have made the base or the fundamental perfect, so you're not going to go wrong into the fundamentals, and that will create your better understanding toward the Spark architecture. Spark architecture learning is necessary. We should go very deep into it, but not starting, because it will create a confusion, and you may, or most of the time, people get into the wrong concept of the Spark architecture. Then when you understood all this thing, then you go into the version of the Spark. Like whenever there is a product and it goes into the multiple development phases, multiple bug fixing, multiple optimization fixing. So there are multiple versions of that product are released in the market from the company, and just go through the versioning of the product, understand which version is the major version, what was the difference in the major version. Then you will understand how the Spark journey was there, because you are going to join the Spark community, or you're going to work on the Spark now in 2025 and or 2026. I hope you'll start now. And but the Spark journey is been since last 12 years, at least in the Indian IT company, or I think yes, 12 to 12 years or 13 years. So in that case, what was the major version? What was the initial version? What was the differences in the major version, or the two major version, previous version and the next version? So you'll understand what all things has been added. And for this, don't go into any videos, not into my videos, not into any other vlog or anything. Just go into the Spark documentation. That is the perfect place to understand the Spark versioning. See, Spark documentation is not a good place to know everything about Spark architecture, but that's a good place to understand the Spark version, what's the update was there in each of the version. Then try to understand the working of the Spark, how Spark works. That will give you that will give you more insight into how Spark works. You can get into like how Spark execution work. You can click on this and you will get into it. Like, okay, this is an ad, let it go. Okay, so you will understand how Spark execution work. And if you see that, like I have described in a very simplified way and very detailed way. So this is very important. Like I have made you understand like how this master slave architecture works. Then now you have understood the big data ecosystem. You have understood MPP processing, massive parallel processing. You have understood Hadoop. You have understood Spark. You have understood OS file system. You have understood Hadoop file system. You have understood database file system. Then now go into the advantage of Spark. Search for the advantage of Spark in one of my videos, or go into any other videos or blog. Try to understand the why we need Spark. What is the biggest advantage in the Spark? Try to get into it. and then try to think of the issues. Like every technology comes with multiple advantage, but there are some issues with that technology. There are some issues still with the problem statement, and for that we always need the evolvement, or we always need the technology to evolve, to get into the better update, to get into the better place, or we have a new technology every time. So you can think of the issues with the parallel processing. Parallel processing is very good, but there are multiple issues when we try to combine the result, when we try the output should be in the sync, or when the data is very skewed. I won't go into the too much of the skewness of the data. I have a separate video. You can see here what is data skewness. This has been very clearly with an example. It has been described here. You can go through this video. Try to look into the issues of the Spark. When you will understand the issue of the Spark, then that will give you flexibility to look into the optimization of the Spark application. See, issue of the Spark will only create a borderline. You will know like till what level you can optimize the system, and how you can stretch to that level. So that concept or that mindset will develop into you when you will understand the advantage and disadvantage or the constraint of the Spark. If you understand both this world, then only you can stretch your optimization technique to that level. Okay. Now at this time, start exploring the architecture. If you've learned everything, you have learned the basic of the Spark architecture, how it execute. Now don't go much deep into it. Now you have to start some practical application. Try like you would have started parallelly with the Python language. So go with the PySpark language. PySpark is very easy to understand. So I won't recommend you to go into the RDD data frame kind of concept right now. Just go into the PySpark. That's itself is the data frame. Go into the PySpark. Don't go into the execution plan into detail. Try to learn PySpark programming language. Try to look into the installation of the Spark in a local machine, in the free tier of the cloud machine. That will give you the exposure of the cloud also. So you can go into, I think here I have done Spark execution architecture in local setup in Mac OS. So this video will give the insight. I don't know why this ad always comes in my system. This okay. So here the most of the like installation part has been described here. This will give very good insight. Like people have tried it and this has worked with them. If you don't want to do the setup in your system, go with the cloud. You can go with the GCP, Google Cloud. They have a free version. Dataproc free node is there. In AWS also you can go into the EC2, or you can create the EMR cluster there. Then you can go to the Databricks cluster also. Databricks has its own cluster, but Databricks can also be joined with the AWS and GCP. I think Azure, yes, Azure also. So you can look into all this cluster. You can try your hands. Okay, and then you will understand more. You can relate these practical things when you will try to. But what I recommend is just in your system try to download the Spark binaries. Try to install in your own system. That will give you more what do you call more exposure towards the Spark architecture. You will understand because it will give lot of issues when you will do everything from in your system, and that issue will help you to understand the Spark architecture more. Okay. So as I mentioned, try start practicing Spark, PySpark, and everything. After this, you go through the Spark use cases where people are using Spark. Like there are multiple use cases you have seen. Client or people have recommended Spark there, but actually that is not the actual use case of the Spark. Unless until your data is very volatile, unless until your data is very big, unless until your transformation is very complex, don't go with the Spark, because Spark, like the people who knows Spark, the engineer of the Spark, it's very tough to hire them. You have to give a lot of money to them. And then the Spark infrastructure is also very complex to set up. We need a specified admin or EMR admin, Hadoop admin for that stuff. So go through the use case of the Spark. Try to understand the Spark optimization. For the Spark optimization, you can go through multiple videos. Here it is Spark optimization. One of the videos, there is Spark skewness is another video. In the Spark interview question also have explained. And then while learning PySpark, you can go through this RDD, data frame, Spark UDF, processing of unstructured, writing the Spark. So this will create a very good base for you. And at the last, try to understand how to debug Spark problems. Don't go with the ready-made UI or the CloudWatch, which is available in the AWS. Try to, when you install in your own system, then at that time you can try to go into the Spark log. You can try to see how to look into the application log. That will give you more insight, more like your vision will be broader while searching the log. Spark logs are very big. Try to go in through the log. Just simply drag the log. You can get the sample log in the internet also. Try to understand what the meaning of warning, what the meaning of error. Sometimes, most of the time, what happens when there is an error in the Spark in particular line you can see in the log, that is not the actual error. You have to go back to some of the lines, try to look into some other errors. When you will start looking into the error of the Spark, then you will have that intuition like where the actual error is. And also, while debugging the error, you should have the some knowledge of the Linux command. Like I have always mentioned, just go with this Linux command. Try to understand Linux command, how to debug the code, how to get into the particular pointers to the code. So try to get into it. So that will give you very good outlook for the debugging of the Spark log. I think this is enough. This is enough for starting the Spark. There is no boundaries, there is no limitation for the learning of Spark. I still, in this experience, I learned Spark from my colleague, from my juniors, from my seniors. So, but this will create a very good base. This is how I have also started. When in my case, I had a time. There was some flexibility because Spark was new, and that advantage was given to us from company, and that advantage we have used it. But now you have another advantage, like you have all the resource, all the materials out and in very detailed way. So that gives you very good thing. When you have done all this thing, then go into the memory execution, how Spark memory works. This video will give you a very good insight on the Spark memory. This is in-depth video of the Spark memory management. You won't need any video apart from this for the execute of the Spark memory management. Try to understand Spark part testing. That is also very important. That should have been done in the initial phase. I hope this video will help you to start with the Spark. But still, if you have any doubt in the Spark, especially how to start with it, if you're in a different technology field, or if you are not in a technology field but you want to start with the Spark, you want to start with the data engineering. So the bigger goal is becoming a good data engineer. Spark is one of the primary skill for that, and then that you have to conquer. Spark needs to be there in your primary skill set if you want to be a very good data engineer. I hope this will help you. Please post your comment. Do subscribe to my channel. We'll meet again with a new. Yes, I want to mention here, like I'm coming up with a new playlist in which I'll be focusing on AWS for the data engineers. Like for the data engineers, which all services you require in AWS, till what extent and what ways you require that AWS services, that will be discussed in that playlist that is going to come soon. I think in few days it will be live. Okay. Thanks for watching this video. Till then, goodbye and happy learning.